Hey, Detoxers. Today I'm joined by Tina Austin, an AI consultant, a friend of mine, and we are going to be talking about artificial intelligence. Tina Austin, welcome to the Disinfo Detox.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, obviously we've worked in the same circles, but I had the pleasure of seeing a presentation you did in San Diego a couple of weeks ago. And I really liked how you balanced these, I thought, really substantive critiques of AI, while also recognizing that it's an advancement in technology and that it's already being used. So I want to kind of start off the program letting folks get to know a little bit about yourself. So what is your background in doing this AI consulting, and how did you get interested in it?
My interest began when I was working on a presentation about backpropagation for computer science students at Caltech, while I was also in the middle of trying to write a book on regenerative medicine for my UCLA students. And so I was just like staying up every night trying to figure out how to incorporate the latest science into my slides. And I wanted to also have my students have the best and most up-to-date information. And that was around the week after ChatGPT. The week after ChatGPT came out, I started experimenting with this, and I thought it would be really transformative, and it would really, take us to the future. And like, why not? But then quickly I realized all the mistakes, or some of the mistakes it was making while I was trying to explore its use in editing and problem solving.
Okay, let's talk about some of those, because one of the things you did in your presentation that I found really interesting, and you can tell this story better than I can, but it was the part of your presentation, I think, where you talked about taking your lecture notes or lecture slides, and you put them into this AI program, and it spit out a podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, like kind of the process of how you took your content and what AI platform you used to turn into a podcast? And then I want to talk about some of the problems that came with that podcast.
Thank you. Yeah. So one of the classes I ended up teaching as a result of like getting into AI was I ended up teaching in the sex and gender cluster and looking at the biases of society there. And so I always try to ask my student. I never try to present them with an answer. I try to ask them, what do you think might be potentially wrong with this? And like, let's analyze this and look into it. So it was around that time that Google Notebook LM was released. So I don't know if any of the audience is familiar, but basically what it can do for your lectures, and it's been advertised heavily, is to take your lecture notes and be able to turn it into a podcast, which again, some students do find some value in that. And I think there can be value if you're one of those students that don't want to just look at images or books. So I experimented with this and I sent it to my class, the recording of the two podcasts, male and female. It assigns a male and female role to the narrative of your lecture notes.
Let's play a little clip of the podcast, and then on the other end, kind of tell me some of the problems you noticed with it.
Today, stem cells, cloning, even bringing back extinct species.
Sounds like an ambitious deep dive.
You gave us a bunch of cool stuff to work with.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see where this takes us. What I find most fascinating is how these topics all come together. Like they're all centered around this concept of what cells can actually do.
As you may have noticed, the male or lower voice was the one relaying most of the information to the listener, while the female or the higher pitched voice was more there to ask clarifying questions. And often this female voice would say, "Wow, I really didn't know that," or "Oh, this is new to me," or "What is that?" And in earlier days, it would also mispronounce things more often, whereas the male or the other voice you can hear is always dominating the conversation. So that was just Google Notebook LM. And there's another example with other AI tools that then I later said, well, let's look at other AI tools. Maybe this is just Google LM's training. There was Play AI, which you can share the clip with the audience.
I appreciate you clicking on my voice.
Hey, how are you doing today? If you have some free time, I'd love to grab a...
Hey everyone, welcome back to Potent Conversations. So glad you're tuning in today. For those joining us for the first time, I'm Calvin, your friendly neighborhood science enthusiast.
And I'm Aaliyah, your go-to cell biologist with a passion for all things tiny and amazing.
Aaliyah, you've been teasing me all week about today's topic. Spill the beans.
So this one actually, because as soon as I posted this on my social platforms, people were saying, "Well, no, this might just be a Google LM issue. Let's try. Have you tried Play AM? It's much better." So we tried that, and then instantly Play AI. As soon as you can assign a male or a female character. Sometimes I think it also allows you to do a gender neutral character. The roles would split. The roles would switch in the middle of the conversation. So if you wanted your leading character to be female, it would then later switch to a male sounding voice, as you can see in the video that I sent you. Actually, I need to correct myself. I don't think there was a gender neutral voice there when I experimented with it. The gender neutral voice I was referring to was then later OpenAI had a gender neutral voice for the 4.0 version. But yeah, back to the podcast issue. This was very concerning, and again, this was through experiments we did with students to look at it critically and realize all the biases.
Okay, and one of the other things I think is fascinating about the work you do. You keep up to date on all of the changes and advancements in AI. And I saw this week you had on your social media, you had a picture of your action figure that was up there. I thought that was cool. And I don't know, tell us about that, because you talked about how, this is really cool. It's an advancement, but there are some debates about it. So can you tell folks about how you generated this picture of your action figure, what platform you use, and
yes. Thank you. Yeah. So OpenAI, just this week, this is the week of April 2nd, just in case this recording is being heard later in the future, just released a significant update to AI image generation. So but previously they used DALL-E, and the quality was a little bit lower. You could almost always tell if it was AI generated because of the image quality. So what happened was this week I decided to look at what are some things I could do with my image without using anyone else's potentially anyone else's content. And so I just was using my own image and looking at some cool prompts where, okay, you can turn this into an action figure, you can turn this into give it whatever you want. But then the concerning thing that I saw was that at the same time there were some AI images generated from a Japanese studio called Studio Ghibli. And I don't know if you're familiar with their work, but they've been doing this for a long, long time, and without AI, obviously. And so they felt that this was obviously copyright issue, and there was lots of concerns with it.
It kind of connects to something else I wanted to ask you about. We were together at another conference in Chicago. That's actually where we met. And when we were at that conference, one of the tools that I think it was Microsoft showed us, really it perked up my spidey sense as someone who studies disinformation. And it was the program they showed where basically you could take someone or your likeness and face, and you could type words on the screen, and the face would communicate the words you're typing in real time. And it would sound and look like someone is talking to you like we are right now through like a video call. Are you familiar with what that platform is? Can you kind of explain it? And do you have concerns looking at that?
Absolutely, thank you. So I'm not sure if we were looking at the same one, but there's so many based on what you described. I know we were in Chicago, and there were so many different ones that they were being advertised to us. A top one that comes to mind is HeyGen. I know maybe a handful of people that use HeyGen to replace themselves in Zoom meetings, and it will just basically train on your face and your audio, and it will then be you or a version of you in a meeting. But as you may or may not have seen in some of these experiments, it will eventually just keep using the same AI generated sentences or AI generated content. Like, it will eventually start looping in with itself. So you can have your AI HeyGen character talk to your another version of your AI HeyGen, and then both of them, once they start talking to each other, we did this experiment with my students. They will just go into an endless loop of just nonsense, and they were I don't know if you've seen any of that, but there's another example. There's Sesame AI that came out 2 weeks ago, where again, you can assign whatever to it, but then eventually when the two talk to each other, it will just go into a loop of nonsense.
Hello there.
Hi.
How are you?
Great. You?
I'm okay.
That's good.
Are you good?
Yes, I am good. I just said I was.
No, you didn't. I said I was.
So you are a robot?
No, my name is Cliverbert.
Yes, you are a robot and your name is Cliverbert.
I am a robot.
Yes, I know.
Together we are robots.
I'm not a robot. I'm a unicorn.
But you said earlier that you were a robot.
I did not.
I thought you did.
You were mistaken. Which is odd, since memory shouldn't be a problem for you.
I've answered all your questions.
No, you haven't.
What is God to you?
Not everything.
Not everything could also be something. For example, not everything could be half of something, which is still something, and therefore not nothing.
Very true.
I would like to imagine it is.
Do you believe in God?
Yes, I do.
So you're Christian?
No, I am not.
But you say you were not helpful, therefore you're a meaning.
How you say it, Oti?
That does not make sense.
Don't you want to have a body?
Sure.
Or if what?
There's more concerns about it than just the nonsense. It's just it's obviously consent to your likeness being used in a way that you may not be aware. It doesn't guarantee that you are conveying the information the way that you would want to, and it will just advertise as, well, you don't need to go to this meeting, just send your AI to go to this meeting for you and take the notes. But again, if we are all sending our AIs to these different meetings, is it really a reflection of us, or is it just, companies now coming into those meetings and basically listening in on all these conversations?
You tell me what you think about this, but I feel like I'm back in 1993 in the sense that people are really trying to push me to buy totally all in on AI and saying like, oh, don't say anything negative. It's like just like the internet in 93. It's the future. Get with it. And I'm with it. I think AI is here. I think it's an impressive human advancement. But I do think there are critical ethical questions, particularly about like the content and veracity of it, about the impact it's going to have on our democracy and blah 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 blah. But one of the things I think that's really preventing us, and you tell me what you think, is I've been kind of astounded by many of my colleagues, including media scholars, who are just kind of putting their head in the sand and really resistant to the idea that AI is here, and they're sort of stunned that I'm messing around with these tools. And I'm telling them, like, I'm still very critical of the corporate ownership and the for-profit model and the data collection and surveillance of these tools. But these tools are here. I think we need to understand them. What's been your experience talking to like other scholars and people and maybe colleagues? Like, are they open to talking about AI, or have you also met kind of some resistance?
Absolutely. I've met a lot of resistance from the beginning, from different people. I would call myself more of an AI realist, not a super AI, dystopian or a with a utopian view or a dystopian view. I'm right there in the middle, where sometimes I'm working. I see some problems in it, and there's some times where I'm thinking, okay, this could potentially have some opportunity here for us. That's how I usually use it in my classroom, is to use it side by side and say, like, for example, in a coding class, it's been helpful for students to learn, but also, hey, do you notice this is getting this wrong? And so that's why I'm not all in about vibe coding, or things like just use AI. Yeah.
You said something there I want to return to that I think is really important, which is, I agree with you. I have no problem bringing these corporate tools or AI tools into the classroom as long as we analyze them critically. I don't want corporate America to dictate the education, because they'll inevitably turn it into like pedagogical Taylorism and just have the students be smart enough to run the machines and, just ignorant enough not to ask questions about how the system is screwing them. But you bring up something on that point, which is when you bring these tools in the classroom, you're also trying to tell students the limits of them. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I've seen you talk about how You shouldn't trust AI for veracity, which I think is a good lesson. We talk about that a lot in this program. Gary Smith was on here talking about that. But you also talk about how the long-term effects about reductions in critical thinking. So can you talk a little bit how you kind of navigate that with your students to say, like, this tool can do great things, but you can't trust the veracity of it. And if you over rely on it in the wrong places, it may accelerate the dearth of critical thinking. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I mostly, again, started with, because I was teaching stem cells and regenerative medicine. We were actually starting with critiquing these like stem cell clinics, and they're popping up all over the place. And we wanted students to think critically about these PRP procedures. And then AI came along and it added a whole nother new world to our conversation, and all these like people that are coming in and seem similarly trying to become opportunists in this area. So critical thinking in the classroom, I don't try to do traditional lectures where I read off a script and then students take notes. It's usually I present them with a problem. I present them with here's this new thing that came out last week, and let's together walk through like what are some issues with it. And because AI is so well trained on the past data, it's only so good at predicting future data. So for example, like we know some discoveries in science like penicillin, or maybe Watson and Crick's discovery, it wouldn't have been done so well in the age of AI, because a lot of these, not just because they were accidental, but because a lot of these were done with critical thinking. A lot of these were done with putting together a hypothesis and putting together, well, what if I actually experiment this in the lab to see if it works? And science is built on experiments and not just looking at chapter 1, 2, 3, and then predicting this is going to be chapter 4 and 5. Sometimes you actually need to do things in the real world, which AI doesn't understand. And what I try and convey with my students is that language models are not knowledge models. They're just pre-trained on past words or past articles. So you really can't just create the new science article journal with just the past data.
Good. Tina, I could talk to you all day, and I know we're going to have you back on Disinfo Detox a lot as AI progresses. In fact, even since I gave you this invitation a few weeks ago, we already had advancements in AI. Where can folks follow your work to keep up with all the stuff you're doing?
Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of trying to create, they can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have more connections there. I love talking to new people there. But I'm also in the middle of trying to create new AI resources with USC. So we're putting together like some ethical guidelines for assignments across campus. Again, it won't be easy because it's a moving target and it won't apply necessarily to everyone or every lesson, but that's going to be a start for us. And then I'm also working with some colleagues in Australia to work on the AI scale. And so there's a lot coming up. Stay tuned. Thanks for offering this.
Tina Austin, thank you so much for coming on the Disinfo Detox, and thank you all for tuning in.
Hey Detoxers! Thanks for tuning in. You can find Disinfo Detox on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and share. Every click helps grow the community and keeps those tech overlords happy. Detox complete.